Hi, everybody. My name's Kate Tarsi. I am one of the co-owners and learning and development specialists at Dirty Hands. I am extremely sweaty right now, both in the area of the armpit and the hands. And I know, as is my lovely co-host, Melissa. We are here today to talk about culture, to talk about how you can crisis-proof your culture, which I don't know if that's ever a real true thing, but yeah, we're here to talk about culture today. And I think before we introduce ourselves a little further, I would like to just put out there that this is the way that I, Kate Tarsi at Dirty Hands, have developed culture. It has worked for me. It has worked for our business. It is constantly in the works and changing and growing. But I don't sit here and pretend to know everything there is or have claimed to read all the culture books or any of that. So this is truly speaking from our and my experience. And I think that that's helpful when you get on a webinar and you're listening to people who you think have all the answers. And I think the older I get, the more I realize that I don't have any answers and I just have experience. So yeah, I want to put that out there. And I know Melissa feels the same way. This is my first webinar hosting. This is, I think, Melissa's second, and her first went horribly. So we're just going to put that out there, right?
Giving it another shot. Yeah.
Yes. So that being said, that being the bar, welcome. And we're really happy to have you. We have no idea how many people or what to expect. We're not even looking at that section. We're really just going to have a human to human conversation about how to build culture and connection in your business and maybe outside of your business too. So I will first let Melissa introduce herself. Melissa from Minor Figures, please let the people know who you are and why you're an expert and the end all be all culture person.
Absolutely. Total expert over here. No, thanks for that, Kate. Thanks for having me on today. Yeah. Super similar to what Kate just said. Like, I can share things that we've done that are working. I can share things I've done that have flopped terribly. I don't think there is like a single solution for how to build a great culture. I think it's very unique to the individuals and the group. So today, anything that I share is obviously very, very personal to my career experience. Quick background on me. I've been in the emerging brands, mostly natural food space for almost 20 years, which is crazy. I've worked with a lot of emerging brands, a couple of whom have gone on to exit, have had some just phenomenal brand experiences. I've also worked with some giant corporations like Coke and Pepsi. So my career really kind of runs the gamut of brand size and organization size. I've mostly been in sales and marketing for the first part of my career, and then the past few years moved more into general management. So as Kate mentioned, I'm currently with Minor Figures Oat Milk. We're a global brand with offices in 3 different countries, and I run our North American business unit. We've got almost 25 employees here in the U.S., growing pretty tremendously year over year. And our team here is all remote. So we're in a pretty unique environment where we don't get that in-office experience. So everything that we do is very intentional, kind of planned and over-planned at some points. But that's what we need to do to really focus on our culture.
Cool. Thank you for that background. I always feel like people can introduce themselves so much better than I can. And you prove the point. So thank you. So I am Kate Tarsi. I have been with Dirty Hands for about 10 years at this point. I was the 4th employee into the company. I was 4th because I was family and because my younger brother, our president, could overwork and underpay me. And that's kind of how he hooked me. And then I hooked my husband into it and my older brother. I started off as a Northeast suburban account manager in Whole Foods. Prior to that, in another life, I was a kindergarten teacher. I taught kindergarten and 1st grade for a couple years, and yeah, just kind of took all of my experience in education and management and classroom management and tried to put it on to my time at Dirty Hands. I from my account manager days moved up to the Boston area in the North Atlantic to open that with my husband as our second region. Because if it was going to work outside of the Northeast, we were going to go up against a really tough market in the North Atlantic. And luckily, after a lot of mistakes and a lot of trial and error, it worked, and we put a team together. And at that point, I moved over to creating our brand management program. I was kind of the first person that would tell the brands what was happening from store level. And so set the foundation for what that looked like, helped to run that team for a couple years before I stopped to have a few kiddos. And when I came back, my passion has always been culture and engagement. And so I really focused on that. How do we get, very similar to Melissa, how do we get this remote company of over 100 people feeling connected and feeling like they have purpose and value? And so I did that for a couple years. And now these days I work side by side with my better half, my husband, in our Dirty Hands University as a learning and development specialist. So yes, run the gamut. I had very little whole food, CPG, natural food industry background, but my mind has been blown as far as what has translated over to, to Dirty Hands, and how at the end of the day, really, it's how you connect with people and how you build relationships that sets you up in any path. So that's kind of who I am and how I got here. And then we're joined by Rachel, who is the behind the scenes queen, and she doesn't want to show her face, so it's fine, Rachel. But that's Rachel. But yeah,
that was so
today,
quick.
I know, that was very quick. We are here to talk about culture. And I think the first thing, Melissa, I wanted to kind of pick your brain about is what kind of set you up on this culture path? We can talk about where we are today and how important it is to us and how, you can't really accomplish things without it. But what do you think started you off on that kind of recognition that culture and connection was something that was important, to you, both probably personally and professionally?
Yeah, I think, there's a couple things. It's all the experiences that I've had in my entire life that make me just deeply know how important culture is for both a high performing team, but also selfishly, like I want to show up in a fun, purposeful environment every day. So I'm building culture a bit for myself as well. I had some amazing mentors growing up, but I think it was a lot of my early brand experience. I was very fortunate to join some brands that had phenomenal culture. I don't know in hindsight if it was an intentionally planned culture or if it was chance or circumstance, but I've had some really amazing experiences. So one of them was with Vega. If anyone's familiar with that brand, there's actually a number of stories about the culture that they built. And the team that we had there was such a tight team who showed up, had each other's backs. This team would fly across the country on their own dimes to go do a race together or run a marathon together or something. So it was just this group that was incredibly supportive. And what came out of that was this work environment that people wanted to show up to. They came in, they gave it their everything. The company was wildly successful. And to this day, and we're talking a decade after it is sold, there's still this really tight group of people that are friends. They have this amazing network. And so I could always just feel and just knew that that culture piece is what creates a really great work experience, which, creates a really successful business. How about you?
I feel like everybody at Dirty Hands, or at least the people that started it, from my dad to my brother to my husband, to my older brother and myself, we all came from really successful sports backgrounds. And I don't mean successful as in we were the best of the best and we won all the games and whatever, but I think we got out of sports what you hope to get out of sports, which is how to be part of a whole, and how if you do your job on a daily basis and you kind of control what you can control, that helps the bigger, the bigger group. And, we were basketball players, soccer players, baseball players, runners. It was, I think, a big lesson for me to learn too about putting in work that wasn't necessarily guaranteed to pay off that next day. So it was the long play, it was, how can I work hard day in and day out, and hopefully down the road I'll see the fruits of that labor. And so, yeah, Dirty Hands kind of started on the back of those experiences. Also with this kind of like dash of competition and competitiveness that was always like really fun to engage in, especially when you were going up against family. But even when we started to, to hire outside the family, we always kind of had that camaraderie where we could talk smack to each other and just kind of like get our engines revving, but always in really good fun. And so, yeah, when I think about Dirty Hands and kind of why we were successful, or why we even thought we could enter something like this, really with us having very little experience, we just knew how to work hard, and we knew how to work for other people outside of ourselves. And so, yeah, I think that's kind of how we started it off. And I also think we had all kind of been under coaches or under leadership or bosses that showed us how to be and how not to be. And so one of the things I can remember is all of us just sitting down and being like, what do we want? What would we want to, how do we want to come to work every day? How do we want to feel? And so we really just created it in this likeness of like, work really hard, and then at the end of the day, be able to laugh and joke and connect. And, it's funny because it was at a time, Dirty Hands was created at a time in my personal family where a lot of things were blowing up. My parents were getting a divorce. My brothers were all over the country. I was doing my teaching degree. My husband was playing professional baseball, and my younger brother had this need to kind of like get us all back together so that at the end of the day, we could have something to talk about that we all had in common, and it was, this buyer in Northeast, or this, this brand that we talked to, like it was this connective tissue that I think really drove why he asked me and my brother and my husband, my mom, an aunt, a cousin, like all of us to kind of have that thing that at the end of the day kept us connected, which is probably a kind of selfish thing for him, but also like part of the origin story of Dirty Hands. And yeah, 10 years later, there's a lot to connect on when it comes to, the evolution of this business. And so, yeah, that's kind of the origin story, one of the origin stories of Dirty Hands.
I'd be so curious, and I bet a lot of people are too, of like, if you started it as a family, like that natural connectiveness that's there, like how do you keep the team connected as you continue to hire outside the family, and you've grown from your family to 100 people?
Yeah, it was a really scary thing to trust that torch with someone that was not blood related to you, that, you couldn't kind of like push up against the wall and be like, you got to work harder, man. But yeah, I always think about like, we were very fortunate because we were in the stores a lot too. And we could work side by side with someone that was in the store for months at a time and go, oh man, this person would be perfect here. So we were able to kind of vet people in real time, which is not always, the luxury that everybody has. But I think once we took that leap and we hired some really good, strong people, and we communicated to them kind of who we were and what we wanted, it just spread like wildfire. And a lot of it too is, I think, like, if you put out there who you are and what you value, and what you're looking for, and you're specific about that, it's a lot like dating. You can be, if you're for everybody, you're for nobody. But if you're specific and you're weird and you share those things that are unique and special to you, you're going to attract those people in return. And that has snowballed into this effect of really just us being dumbfounded as to how we keep attracting the type of people and talent and, folks that are just cut from that same cloth, just year after year after year,
Yeah, I would echo that almost exactly. Like for us, particularly at Minor Figures, like our brand and our culture are almost one and the same. Like they're so
Mm-hmm.
deeply entwined, and it is really what makes us successful here. So the Minor Figures brand is a really rad brand, right? We have really high performing products. We resonate with a very like bold, socially conscious demographic. We show up in really fun and expected ways, and we have this value that everyone's invited, and that is our culture as well. So when people see a job posting and they come to work for Minor Figures, like they expect a work experience that matches that brand experience, right? So we work really hard to, some of it's values-based hiring, some of it's, personality traits, some of it's very intentional culture planning. But what we end up with is a team that's just like our brand. They're a super high performing team. They feel very included. They feel a sense of belonging. They feel a sense of purpose, and they deliver in ways that we could never expect, and without that, like there's no way we would see the level of success that we're having.
Yes. You talked about values-based hiring. Talk a little bit more about what that means to you guys there.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we want people that are going to show up and be kind of put in the same level of like passion and commitment that the team today has, because we know that like everyone really needs to be kind of giving the same. So we've got some job openings right now, and you can even see in our job descriptions, like it's a lot about values and who you are and how we want you to show up every day. And we've found some ways to ask questions during that interview process to really get at those. Obviously, you can't just ask someone during an interview, like, do you act like an owner? Like, it doesn't work. So you have to be pretty special in how you frame up those questions to really have people share their experiences and share their own values. And then we can see if that's a match. One interesting thing that I've been focused on lately is that in our hiring process, actually, because we're growing so quickly, we've always had this mindset of like, oh, we need to hire people that are a culture fit. And actually shifting that a little bit to say we want to hire people that are a culture add, that they're actually additive to our culture versus just right into the box. So that's been a little bit of a change for us, but it's one I'm excited about.
Yeah, one of the best things we ever did, and I can't remember how many years in we were, but someone challenged us to kind of put down on paper what do you feel like is your special sauce, and up to that point we would be like, it's this feeling, it's this person, it's, you'll know it when you see it. And it was a difficult thing to say, okay, what does that translate into if we were to put it down in writing? And the ownership team, the family worked really hard to get to these kind of 8 things that were really reflective of who we are and how we wanted to show up. And I think there's a big difference too between what is your job and how we are looking for you to do that job. And a lot of the 8 things that we came up with are how you go about doing it. It's the how versus the what. And you talk about the who too. And all of us in our family, I feel like we're very, very culture heavy. We were very feeling space. Oh, we got a good vibe from this person or a good feel. And that can take you a good long way. But there was a lot that we had to learn about, okay, it's not only a gut decision and a feeling and a how, but one of the best things you can do is set up someone to know what their job is and what they can expect. And so one of the biggest things I feel like that we've learned, especially my family, is we may have this super strong culture bone, but where we were very weak were in the process and procedure and all that kind of stuff that you look at and go, oh God, do you really need that? And like, yes, you do need that. And we really rode the back of culture for a long time before we realized that a good culture has as strong an understanding of what is expected of people and what they can expect in their jobs. And that is doing them a disservice if we don't have that. So talk about like learnings and all of that. That was a really, really big learning curve for us. who very err much on the side of like feeling and emotion. You know what I mean?
Yeah, there's definitely a healthy balance between the
Yes.
vibe and actually what makes the most sense. And I imagine
Yes.
like I certainly have background of this, but like you probably got it wrong a couple times, right?
So many times. We continue to get it wrong. Yes.
Yes, it's a constant evolution.
Yes. And I think like the getting it wrong too is almost more valuable than getting it right. It's that, you know, not to pepper in some business jargon, but the fixed mind versus the growth mind. But like even 10 years in, I think we're 12 years as a business. We are still figuring it out and messing it up and, you know, hiring maybe someone that might not be the wrong fit and having them realize that and kind of move on. Like all of that is such an important process. And yeah, it's been, my brain, I feel like has just expanded with the amount of, you know, of information and experience and learning that has happened in the last 10 years as a business owner for someone who did not have any drive to own a business and, you know, and be an entrepreneur, you know? So
yeah.
Hey,
well, I feel like the last 3 years or
go ahead.
so. Oh, sorry. Just even like the last 3 years, it feels like has been such a dynamic shift in how teams are managed, and I think I guess, you know, teams' expectations of what their brand or their company should be for them. It feels much different to me than it did a decade ago. So it is a very much an evolving journey.
Yes. You mentioned something. You mentioned the F word, which is fun.
Oh, I was like,
fun.
We're already
not that F word.
Okay.
Yeah, you mentioned the word fun, and I want you to maybe you could just talk a little bit about where you see that fitting in and why. And I know you feel this way, but why you feel that is a necessary part of your time at work.
I mean, I think it has to be, right? We're similar to you guys. We're growing really fast. We ask a lot of our team, and they need to show up. And like, if you are dreading going to work, if you have the Sunday scaries, like you just don't want to go, right? And I don't want to go. Like, I want to show up to a fun environment too. And so, I mean, fun obviously means a lot of different things for a lot of people. Like some people have fun when they're really energized and they're moving very fast. Some people need like those very intentional, like fun breaks during their day. But like, if we're going to ask people to show up and work their ass, I just now I'm swearing. If we want people to show up and work their asses off, like they need to enjoy their time doing it. Because it also like impacts their nights and their weekends. And I want our team, I want their partners to know that Minor Figures is a fun place to work, right? Like I want all of that. So it is hard. So we try to find the fun in the work that we are actually doing, like the true work. And one of our values at Minor Figures is actually that it's an exhilarating ride. Like if you don't like the pace of this business, if you don't like the constant changing and dynamics, like you're not going to have fun here. So we do need to like really kind of suss that out during hiring. But then, like the fun, we're remote. We don't have the chance to just like go pull a prank on someone in their office or something, right? So like we have to make moments of fun outside of the work as well. So, I mean, there's a couple different things that we've done here that we can talk about too. But what's your take on fun at Dirty Hands?
Yeah, it was very similar. It is something that makes me want to get up and go do the job. And if I, as an owner, don't feel like doing that, then the trickle down effect of that is always not very great. And I always, I looked at fun, especially we looked at it a lot during the pandemic, and we stayed open, business as usual. We cut our visits down to one a day. But we really kind of looked at like, how do we keep us together, and how do we make sure that in a global, pandemic, that we still could inject some lightness and fun. And kind of just like poking around the internet and reading some stuff, fun kept coming up with this idea of resiliency, and how if you can inject fun and lightness and humor and laughing into what you're doing, it makes your teams and your company more resilient to kind of ride through those difficult times and moments. And I can remember that theme coming up too in parenting. I have 2 kiddos. I'm in the weeds. I got one on the way. But I remember reading some article very early on in my parenting that talked about like, what is the greatest wish that you want for your kids? And a lot of people would say, well, I want my kids to be happy. And the point of the article is like, happiness is so up and down, and it is so dependent on the person and the event and the moment. And what you really want for your kids is to be resilient and to be able to weather the times where stuff really sucks and it's really bad. And you want them to be able to kind of keep on keeping on. And so, yeah, I think a lot of that for me came out of COVID, especially because as a culture person, I've my whole life learned the hard lesson that like, I can't fix any situation. I can't fix your unhappiness. I can't put the culture of dirty hands on my back and, you know, because I'll have nothing left. And so I think, yeah, one of my biggest learnings was less about how do I make people here happy and want to stay, and more about how do we create the environment that fosters fun and laughing and lightness that will then help us through stuff that's really, really hard.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think you have to build a team and kind of set an expectation, or at least open the door for the team to realize that they're creating and impacting that culture as well. So you can't have someone who comes in and just looks at you and says like, okay, Kate's going to set
you're the boss. You're right. It's two-sided.
Yeah. That's not how this works. Like every single person contributes to us, and like we're still relatively small. Like actually, I feel big now. We're 25 people, but like a new person coming in still has a really big impact on that business. There's still a really high percentage of our total workforce. So like every single person has this ability to influence in a positive or a negative way the culture that we have.
That is such a great, it's such a great thing to realize, that as someone like me who, feels like it's always my responsibility to make everything okay, that it is a two-way street. And that if you have put out into, the ether what you're looking for, that when someone decides that they'd like to be here and join this culture, that their end of the bargain is living by those and trying their best every day to kind of add positively, because there's really only 2 things you can do. You can create something great, or you can destroy something. And it's really a choice every day. And sometimes, that choice is hard. And sometimes it's a Sunday night where you're like, oh God, and I think those are the moments too, where you've got to have certain people that you can count on to remind you what you're doing and why you're doing it. And I can remember the really, really early days of Dirty Hands, and just not really knowing my ass from my elbow and just having to call my brother, at 4 a.m. and go, why am I doing this with you? What is this about? What is this for? And him really helping to bring me back to purpose and a laugh, and him telling me to go get a croissant, and just, he'll see me at the end of the day. So
that's really good advice.
Yeah. Yeah, I took that advice, the croissant part of it, very seriously for my 10 years here. And even now that I'm not in store anymore, I take that very seriously. So. Oh, gosh. Let's see here. Talk a little bit about how, you guys were born in the pandemic, correct?
Pretty much, yeah. Yes. Our U.S. business office division started in 2019. So right before the pandemic. And the team has always been remote. So there was never really an office. We have done some shared co-working spaces. We actually have shared co-working spaces right now. So our team uses a platform called Desk Pass that basically gives you can enter, anyone on our team can enter into any sort of co-working space that they want. But outside of that, everybody has been remote, and it's always been like that. So I guess we were kind of born and raised during a crisis. So maybe that's made our team extra resilient or extra close, like extra supportive. It's hard to speak to, like, because we didn't exist prior.
It was just a funky moment where Dirty Hands was used to, I was even going to say monthly or maybe quarterly team days where whoever you were with, you'd get together and you'd go do something frivolous and fun that didn't have anything to do with work. And maybe before that, you'd hit a couple stores. We did community days where on a certain day, everybody in the company, no matter where you were involved in some type of community event. And I think the biggest thing, especially for the leadership team, and then from there it trickles down, is, we'd get together and we would work really, really hard somewhere in some, hotel conference room. And we would then after that close everything up and we'd go share a meal and we'd go do something connective and fun that had nothing, that you could see people's true personalities and all of that. Yeah. All of that kind of just stopped. Mm-hmm. And so we had a lot more time to connect with people. We were always like you, we were far away. But we tried to kind of fill the time with fun things that would take people out of experiencing this really heavy moment. So we did some stressed baking series, which was definitely a result of me being pregnant and really just wanting to bake at the time. So we would all put a recipe, you'd sign up and you'd put a recipe out and people would come, and some people would come and bake with you and other people would just come and drink a glass of water and laugh. And we just did silly, fun, connective things that could take the moment and make it a little bit easier and lighter. Yeah.
Do you still do the very fun connected things? Do you guys still do baking series?
Yeah. So we had in the last couple years, obviously we ramped right back up again, and we came out of the pandemic. And we had a big change from salaried employees to hourly employees. And so all of the, happy hour type situations, or we had a book club where we would meet and, discuss a podcast or a book, or, the stress baking series, people's time became so finite. And if you wanted anybody to do anything outside of the work hours, it was a tall ask, and they had to do it because they wanted to. And of course there's legal, all of that. So that was a really big push for why we started this little podcast radio show thing that we're doing called The Dirty Dial, because we had to kind of listen to where people were, which is in their cars a lot of the time, and how we could get to them and how we could reach them and how we could inject even a little bit of fun and learning and lightness into their day while they are en route to, to their job. And so that's kind of our initiative right now. And just kind of having a lot of fun creating things that are interesting and fun for our folks to hear, and also trying to add as many people in as possible so that they can, be excited to listen and hear themselves and all of that. So yeah, it's definitely changed pre and post.
Yeah. Do you guys have any fun committees, anything along those lines?
Not officially. No. Do you guys?
Our team has it's called the Stoke Committee, to keep the Stoke.
Oh yeah, I was going to ask you what that was.
It actually stands for something, but I'm going to draw a blank on what it stands for now. But the name is amazing, yeah. And so the Stoke Committee is just volunteers from minor figures that they get together on a monthly basis and they talk about what's the next activity that we're going to do. We've done tie-dye competitions in the past. Cool. We've done step challenges. I think they're planning a virtual tea tasting right now because someone on our team has a tea background. So just trying to find those different things that kind of bring us together in ways that might tie back to work, but also might not.
Yes. Well, now that you mention it, we do, we do a spirit week once a year where if you want to get involved with that, you can, where we do, Twins Day. And we lost such a gem of a coworker in July, who really just carried so much of what we love about this place, in the fact that you can laugh at yourself, work really hard, not take yourself too seriously. And so we made a day called Rocket Like Richardson, where we dress up as this dude because he was pretty eccentric and wild and fun. So we do that. We have a wellness week every January to kind of gear back up with little challenges and stuff. And yeah, I think, it definitely looks different, but it is just something to give your brain a break from the very difficult nature of this job, especially the store level folks who are just, it's a grind. And I know because I've done it, and I may not have done it in, a couple years, but I understand and so empathize with the focus and the getting up early and the just a little bit better every day. It's just so much and so hard. So we just, try to lighten it up a little bit,
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay, I'm getting a message. If there's anybody that wants to submit a question, go ahead and do that now. You can put it into the questions tab. And if not, that's okay too. Don't worry. You don't have to come up with a question if you don't have one. Let's see here.
This question from M. Roberts is great.
Oh, go ahead. I didn't even see.
Yeah, so asking for tips about keeping people positive and excited and being accountable for their work and keeping it transparent. This is actually something that I'm really passionate about. And we just did an engagement survey of our team where we find out just how they're feeling about the company overall. And one of the areas that our team scored really high on is alignment and involvement. So I think the questions revolve around, like, I as an individual know how my work leads into the goals of minor figures. So we got this really great score on that. So the way that we do it is we layer everything up to our business unit goals. So we've got, let's call it 5 big things that we want to accomplish in North America this year. That trickles down to departments and what the departments need to do by quarter. That trickles down to what individuals on those teams need to do on a weekly, monthly, quarterly basis. And we don't just set those and forget them at the beginning of the year. We revisit them all the time. So we do a weekly staff call with all hands staff call. And on the first one of each month, we go through all of those goals and we look at all of the department goals and track how we're progressing towards them. So it allows the team total transparency into what are we over delivering on? What are we behind on? What did we totally drop the ball on? Or what did we pivot on too, right? Maybe we had a goal at the start of the year and that goal no longer makes sense for us. So we're super open when something has changed or it hasn't worked. And then I think by creating that space as the leadership team and being pretty vulnerable, the good, the bad, and the ugly, that helps in turn to create that safe space for our team to also share when things aren't going as well.
Yes, that is, I think, such a misconception about leaders and presidents and CEOs and the fact that you have to show up stone-faced, confident all the time. That's just not how, it's not real life, and it doesn't ingratiate people to you as well. And I think that has been a huge learning curve for us at Dirty Hands, is how do we project strength and sturdiness in these times of crisis while also being vulnerable and transparent so that people don't sit in their office or in their car alone and think, well, it must be me. I must be the nuts one. I must be crazy because I'm the only one that feels this way. And truly, I think it is a trickle down, and we've done it both ways. We have tried very hard to be stone-faced and project this, maybe something that wasn't true or real. And we've done it the other way. And the other way allows for people to share their own stuff and feel comfortable and really show up in an authentic way. And I think too, in your question, how do you keep people positive and excited and accountable for their work? In some of the reading that I've done as far as culture and all of that, the 3 things that come up a lot. And I think one of them is from Daniel Pink's book, Drive, about motivation and all of that, is those 3 things: autonomy, purpose, and connection. And autonomy for me, especially in a business where everyone's remote, and there are some times where our store level people haven't seen their manager in 2 weeks because, it's just how it is. That piece about autonomy and trust is incredibly important. And people are excited and positive about things that they have a say and control in. I think that's one of the things that when I was a kindergarten teacher and I took a class in college on classroom management, has always stuck with me through a business, through parenting. It's really like sitting down and giving the people in that case, in my classroom, a say in how our classroom ran and what was important to us. We used to call it standards of operation. And it's very similar, in how we run our house and how we try at least to, I'll say we're on the same team, and you can have people, we were talking about this before, but you can have people comply because they have to and it's their job and they're afraid of losing it, or you can build connection and you can have people want to versus feeling like they have to. And that autonomy piece, I feel like breeds into connection. And if you've set up what your purpose is, you have a really strong foundation as to how to get people inspired and motivated. And I think too, the other thing is like, you can't motivate someone else. All you can do is find out what is important to them and try to incorporate it into how you're doing your business and because you will always have to be that little pat on the back to somebody forever if you are responsible for motivating them versus them motivating themselves,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
One thing that we did actually just this week that I'm really excited about, we'll see if it translates into anything though, but kind of circling back on your comment and also back to this question of like the good, the bad, and the ugly. I mentioned that we just recently did this engagement survey. We scored super high on some areas. We scored not as high in other areas, right? And those things we also bring up. So one area that we did not score as high on was people feeling like their voices were always being heard or that they were contributing to decisions that impacted them. We take that super seriously, right? So on our staff call, we actually did a new thing where we said we really want to dive into this kind of concern around decision making, and we want to get individuals' feedbacks. We know in a group of 25 people on a call, if you ask a question, like no one's going to say anything, right? So we used Google Meets. We separated out into smaller breakout rooms. So we put people into breakout rooms of like 4 or 5 team members, not with their department head, not with anyone from leadership. And they had a question that they would talk to as a group and then come back to. And what came out of that was this incredible dialogue and incredible input from our team. They felt safe enough to share this feedback that we can now take as a leadership team and create an environment where like people can weigh in more on decisions, or they know if there's a decision made that they're not a part of, they maybe better understand like why they weren't a part of that decision. But I think it was like, I really love it because I think it was us as a company saying, hey, we are not there yet. Like we have not nailed this piece of our culture or our business, but being really just transparent with the group that like we want to get better on it.
Yes. I think I've learned too, and we've learned that unless you're ready to really act on the feedback that you get, to ask for an open forum on what do you like, what do you not like the feedback has to be very pointed, and or else you just have asked for feedback that you can't really deliver on. And that for us in the development of our HR program, and I've learned that unless you are really ready to make change, asking for feedback has to be done in a way that is very pointed so that you can make good on the ask. The other thing I feel like I've learned, and this, you almost having teenagers, you have, is that, again, going back to fixing versus being an outlet for someone to vent or have, like sometimes being willing to hear people is just as good as having a solution or a fix. And I think a lot of people feel like unless they're going to have the fix, that it's really difficult to listen to people have a hard time,
Yeah, I think that's true. Like if you want people to show up as their authentic selves, which is going to make them enjoy their work experience more, you do need to give them that place to be able to do that. So they shouldn't feel
Yes.
like, oh, I can't call you if I'm just, upset and out of sorts. Like, no, you should
Yeah.
call me. Like, let's figure it out, or just have an event session or something. But like, you've got to
Yeah.
create that environment where people feel comfortable to do that.
Yes. Yeah. And you have to be okay with, not being able to maybe fix and change it right away. But it is, as we grew Dirty Hands, we started with a very core group of people. And as we've grown, that direct, you can call me if you need me type of relationship sometimes is difficult to maintain as you grow and grow and grow. And so it's really, I think for us, it was really important, and is still very important for us to put in place leadership that has those values and can listen to feedback and and help, and also know when someone just needs a moment to vent. And because it's easier when there's 50, and then when you have 150, you're kind of just like, oh, help, how do I keep connected in the way that I did when we had 50 people. And you feel, sometimes you feel very very distant from people, which is why we've tried to, anybody new that comes to Dirty Hands gets on an onboarding call with me and my brothers and my husband and my dad, so that we can at least, on the way in, establish that connection. We can talk about our history. We can talk about those 8 things that really are the things that we strive to be every day. And we can kind of show them who we are and how we interact, and have that be the thing that they, enter with. We call it our guiding principles call, and we do it, every 2 weeks. It's just like a very, it's an attempt to just kind of keep it feeling small, even when it gets huge.
Yeah, I love that.
Oh,
how often does Dirty Hands get together as an entire team? Are you okay?
Yeah, sorry. Gosh, before the pandemic, you get your team. Yeah, we were doing monthly team days. We would do our community days like every quarter, so it was a lot more. I don't know. Am I going to?
Yeah, getting a little choppy.
Okay, is that better?
I think so.
Okay. I think I'm a little still. Well, so definitely not as much as we would like. We had and still have this beautiful, beautiful dream of getting everybody in the same place. We had a retreat planned in Poconos for everybody and anybody that wanted to come. And
Wow.
Out of kind of what was happening financially with the market and all that, we were like, this is not the moment to do it, and we had to stop. And but it's our big dream to have everybody kind of together, and we have not made it a reality yet.
Gotcha. We're working on ours right now. We try to do an annual, we don't call it offsite, we call it an IRL, because we're offsite all the time. So we do an annual IRL where we're bringing everyone together. Outside of that, we're trying really hard to get people together at regional events, so different trade shows. We might bring in people that like normally wouldn't come into to that sort of thing, but just so they can spend some time with the group together.
Yeah, we've started to ramp up this year. We had a couple retreats, just kind of smaller pockets of the leadership team. The ownership group and our directors got together in Exeter and just had some pizza and a brain session in our Exeter office. And it is truly the thing, especially when you work remotely. It's the thing that energizes you to get to the next thing, whatever that next thing might be. It's like Mario eating the mushroom and powering up so that you can get to the next time when you're, it's just such a great thing to be able to be together with people.
Yeah, definitely. We're doing our first ever just virtual lunch next Friday. So we'll buy everyone on the team lunch and sit around and watch each other eat on camera, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah, the one thing that we do, no matter what, pandemic, no pandemic, whatever, is we do our holiday help, which is the 3 days before Thanksgiving, we all, no matter where we are, we get to the store and we put all of our, agendas to the side. Of course, we make sure our brands are looking good and everything's fine, but we do a lot of help on behalf of the store. And then we have whoever you're with in the store or, regionally, wherever you are, you go and share a meal after. And it's just everybody doing it on the same day at the same time for those 3 days is really something that everybody looks forward to. It's a connective thing for us.
I think we might have a little choppiness on your side still, Kate. So
yeah.
Sorry, everyone.
I apologize about that.
Oh, now it's back and perfectly clear.
Is it? Okay.
Yeah.
It sounds very echoey to me. So as long as it sounds okay to you.
Yeah.
Well, we've got about 8 minutes left. If there's any other questions, drop them into that question chat. Let's see. Melissa, okay. I think to end, what is one of the biggest things that you've learned, and what is a small takeaway that you feel like we could share that would, put some of this stuff into a concrete practice?
The biggest thing I've learned. That feels very, very pressure. I think the biggest thing I've learned, it's what people say all the time, and you just cannot emphasize it enough, that the team is everything. And a team that feels connected, a team that feels included and a sense of belonging will rally together for each other. They'll rally together for you. A team that doesn't care, it's real easy to check out and walk away. So it is our job as leaders to do our best to give people the experience that they deserve and that they want, to be super open that we're not going to get it right all the time, and we don't get it right all the time, but that there is no leader that has all these answers, right? So everybody should be learning as they go. You should always be aiming to get better, but it is that, that is the biggest lesson. Without a solid team, we're not going to get anything done. So for me, that's the big ticket moment.
Cool. Mm-hmm. I'll share mine. Am I still echoey to you?
You're kind of choppy again. Yeah.
Sorry.
That's okay.
I think one of the big things that I've learned as someone who, again, never set out to run a business or to own a business, and someone who really errs on the side of fixing and taking care of and empathy and all of that, is that you have to look at your business, if you're a business owner, and even if you're not, you have to look at your business as, we look at it as a baby. Our business, Dirty Hands, is an entity. It's a living, breathing entity that needs to be also fed and taken care of and considered. And so when you are in charge of the well-being of 100+ people and all the people that they come attached with and the responsibility behind that, you can't lose sight that the bigger picture and that bigger entity of your business, that unless that is healthy and well and taken care of, that you can't take care of the people that make that business up. And that has provided, I think, a little bit of perspective and a little bit of grace when it comes to having to make really difficult decisions. And so, I think that's just important, that if you're on here and you're a small business owner or you work for a, business, that the health and wellness of that business is the thing that allows all of the other things to function. And keeping that health and wellness is really hard and really difficult. And along with that responsibility comes with the responsibility of you really caring and trying to be and do the best you can on behalf of both that entity and the people that make it up. That's one of the big things I've learned as far as this whole culture and crisis and kind of weathering the storm thing.
Yeah, absolutely. It's really well said.
Yeah. And I think one thing that I would challenge any of you to either get your leadership teams to do or for you to do if you're managing a team yourself, and even if you're not, what are the things, what are the ways that you want to show up, or what are the ways that you want your company to show up? What are your hows? What's your secret sauce? And if you are the owner of a business, how do you want your people to feel about their job, and how do you want them to treat the job that they're doing? And mix that in with what? Make sure the what is obviously very strong. They know what to expect. They know what their job is. But how do you want, how do you want your people to show up, and write it down? And it's hard. It's really hard to kind of like put all that juicy, emotional, woo stuff down on paper. And if you don't have a team and you're kind of out there on your own, like, how do you want to show up? And maybe put it up somewhere so that every day you're looking at, who you are, and you know what your job is, but you also are guided by how you want to do the job. And if those two things don't line up, I don't know, maybe it's time to make change if you're lucky and able to do that. So yeah. Any tips and tricks for you, Melissa?
I think you've nailed it. Yeah, I think you create a space that you want to be a part of, and know that culture does not just happen on its own. Like there has to be intention behind it, and it's also not a set it and forget it. It's constantly changing and very dynamic. And I think as leaders, you have to be hyper aware of that and stay really in tune with it, and like always pushing yourselves to be better. Yeah.
100%. And if you're not a business owner, you still every day contribute to the culture. So do you want to create something, or do you want to tear something down? How can you put your special ingredient into the sauce that is the bigger entity of where you work? So
yeah, definitely.
Yeah. So we did it. We survived. I have incredible pit stains. So you're welcome, everybody. But thank you all for hopping on and being interested in listening to two people that again don't have all the answers, but have a real passion, I think, for people and for the experience that they're helping to provide in the workplace. And I think if everybody had been a little bit more thoughtfulness around that, it would be, going to work would be a little bit of a better experience in some cases.
Absolutely.
So
thanks for having me, Kate.
Yeah. Oh, thank you so much for sharing your experience, and just for being as nervous as I was going into this. So all right, Rachel, you better show your face before we get off this.
Hey.
Why would you make me do that? All right, cool. Great conversation. Webinar will be sent out to everyone within 24 hours. I do believe it sends like immediately, but I'll make sure that it gets sent out before tomorrow.
Great. Thanks, everybody.
All right.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.